Alright, how you guys doing today? About to hop into a little reaction to First Things First though. Just want to make sure y'all like that video up. You know what to do. Hit a little exit full screen. Scroll just a little bit, like the video, and then full screen it back up. You feel me? So today's video is coming from Dr. Frank Turk at Cross Examined, titled Why Would God Create Special Needs People? So my personal take on this, right? Because I've done a little research, one, but two, right? Just this verse alone, Jesus and the blind man, John 9, one of my favorite, if not my favorite story in the Bible. Not my favorite verse. It's up there. It's definitely up there. But one of my favorite stories, if not my favorite story. Because when they said, who he sinned so he was born blind, he said neither. But it was so the works of God should be made manifest, or in clearer English, so the works of God might be displayed and illustrated in him, right? And personally, I take this to mean a whole host of things. One, that take a blind man, for example. You and me and everybody with their sense of sight takes that for granted on a daily basis, right? We just wake up and we can see, and we don't really thank God for it on a daily basis, but we may see a blind person walking around and be like, God, I thank you that I have the gift of sight, right? But look at the testament of life that blind person is living. Just the fact that they're getting around the way they're getting around, whether it's with a dog, with a cane, echolocation on animals, you know what I'm saying? Like, literally, people are missing a whole sense, 1 out of 5 of the things that makes life for real, and they're living. If that's not a work of God, I don't know what is. And they're living and they're functioning, and it's beautiful. Two, that blind man got healed by Jesus. Without him being blind, what would he have been healed for? What sin would there have been to heal him for? What faith would have had to been displayed, right? And three, so that the works of God may be manifest, right? So one, we talked about how they function. And just like, you're missing this thing, it's just a true testament to God's power, how somebody can lack something and still live. Two, that there's an opportunity to be healed. But three, the faith that you need to have to go through that. Or not go through that, but just the fact that you rely on God, right? The fact that it's his works will be made manifest. Something about that condition, any condition, not just blindness, is proving the works of God. And it's up to us as Christians to have the faith that he's doing that, even though we don't know how. But just having that faith alone proves that there's a work, because even that person to us, right? The second point was just that it's for them and their faith, right? Knowing that they can look to God, but it's also so we can look to God, because we see that and it brightens our faith by saying, God, thank you for what I have, but also pray that this person may be healed, or pray that this person's life may be easier, or pray that they just have peace of mind knowing that it is what it is. So all paths point back to the faith, right? And working for God's glory, no matter what the ailment is. So we're going to check out what Dr. Frank Turek has to say to this at a conference when a student asked him that.
Even though I might not want to do it. I do want to do it, but I don't. Can we just be honest? I didn't want to lay there all night going, Dad, no. Dad, no. Didn't want to do it.
So you mentioned the teleological argument. We just spoke about it just with the last person. We understand that it means that that there's an intelligent design with the creation, that God sustains creation. We could also argue that it's because, or that the teleological argument speaks on the topic of purpose, that everything has purpose, and we could argue that the ultimate purpose is for glorifying God. So let me go ahead and do this. Why does God create people with special needs? Say low-functioning Down syndrome or autism, etc., so forth, if they are supposed to have a purpose to worship, work, and live for his glory, and they can't do that in the way that other people can.
Okay, well, first of all, what does Jesus say to the young man who was born blind?
Are you speaking in reference to how he says it is not his sin or his parents' sin, but rather that the glory of God may be manifest in him? Yeah.
I'll just use one example. It's not just people with special needs, but it's suffering in general.
Well, certainly.
Okay? The scriptures talk a lot about suffering, and the only human being, completely innocent human being, that suffered the greatest, of course, was Jesus, and that suffering was for our ultimate good. In other words, suffering can bring forth good. But I just remember my grandmother, for example. My grandmother, the last 4 years of her life was bedridden. And people were asking, well, God, why don't you just take her? What kind of quality of life is this? And my aunt, who took care of her every day for 4 years, grew more in that 4 years than she did in her previous 44. I remember in 2020, the whole COVID year, my father was dying. And he had something called sundowners. You know what sundowners is? When the sun goes down, they kind of lose their personality, they kind of get very petrified and they do erratic things. And my dad would get up in the middle of the night and wander the house. And I remember laying on the floor next to him, and he would try and get out of bed, and I would just put my hand up and say, Dad, you gotta stay in bed. And then I'd have to do certain things for him that he'd look at me and he'd say, nobody should have to do this for me. And I said, Dad, you're actually helping me. Because by me having to serve you, you're helping me. Because if life was just all about me and what I wanted, I'm not going to become more like Jesus. If I'm forced to take care of somebody else, even though I might not want to do it. I do want to do it, but I don't. Can we just be honest? I didn't want to lay there all night going, Dad, no. Dad, no. Didn't want to do it. But I grew through going through that. By the way, there's Richard Dawkins and others, atheists, have talked about we should eradicate Down syndrome. In the womb. You find out a baby's down, you abort him, right? You want to, and I think Iceland is bragging about that. We've pretty much eradicated Down syndrome. Does anyone in here know a Down syndrome person? Do you know who's abnormal? We are, not them. They're the most loving people I've ever met. They're special needs. No, we're special needs. We're brats, right? We're shallow. We're selfish. We need difficulty in this life. It's a fallen world, but we need it, and the scriptures talk about it. Paul talks about it building character. James says, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. Does anyone here count it joy when you're trying to hold your dad up all night? I don't.
I loved your answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edward.
And there's a beautiful point there, right? And when he said, we're the special needs people, right? We have special needs. We're vain. We're shallow. We're all these different things, right? And I think a point can be made that technically these people are lacking something. Or technically, I don't know if Down syndrome is an excess in the chromosome, a mutation in the chromosome, or a lacking, right? But either way, we can look at them and we say that they're lacking certain functions that we have, right? These basic functions that we would think everybody should have. But he said they're the most happy, they're the most kind, they're the most loving people. But they're lacking function, so how does that make sense? And if you look at it, now Bible is pretty clear with a lot of the weak will confound the wise. You know, God is going to take the fools and make the people who are wise look like fools. And it always shuns the people who are wise in their own eyes, right? So could it be that this lack of functioning is really how we're supposed to be, right? The more functions we have as humans, the less, I don't want to say the less Jesus like we are, but I hope you get the point that I'm trying to say, right? The less functions we have, the less we can think about just ourselves, right? The less we can use these gifts that we've been given on evil self-serving practices, right? And partially, I wonder if some of that has to come by the fact that maybe they rely on somebody to take care of them in some host of ways, right? I know there's a lot of independent people with Down syndrome, right? They got actors, they got bankers, they got like literally anybody in their community can do any type of job, right? There's a lot of people that apply themselves really hard. Don't get me wrong. But then there's also the people that do need that extra push. And I wonder if without that extra push, everybody would be able, like they'd be able to reach every level that we reach without trying to sound harsh, right? Y'all know I'm coming from a place of love. And then without needing that push, we just get a society, right? If everybody was Down syndrome, right? Without needing that extra push or acting like, you know, we need to help them. If it's just these really kind and loving people who are then doing everything that we do, but we're still calling them, oh, they have Down syndrome, they have this ailment, they have this, you know, they're not right. But we are the same people that watch as homeless people parade the streets, as people suffer and hunger all around the world. Education ain't even free over here. We're the right ones. Not these people that you look at them half the time, they're freaking smiling and happy. They got the real joy that God intended for humans to have, right? And they have needs. They have special needs. No, we really do have the special needs. We have the need for attention, the need for want, the need for to make us seem above them and better than them. Well, really, we not, bro. We really not. Because honestly, right, I can't fully say like I trade lives, but right, I trade mindsets if I could, if that makes sense, right? And I know I'm doing a lot of generalizations, right? But I hope you guys can see that I come from a place of love, right? I've done some volunteering for like Special Olympics. My mom, she works with people with intellectual disabilities, and that's literally her whole thing. She's getting her PhD in that, you know. So like I'm very tapped in that sense, right? And I have a lot of love for these people. I have a lot of love for everybody. But it's just beautiful the way that Dr. Frank Turek explained that, because it really is that sense. I'm pretty sure we reacted to this video before. I'm not even gonna lie, right? But we can easily forget that they're just like us, except happier. The less makes them more. The same way that Jesus said, less is more. Right? Sell everything, follow me. Humble yourself. Serve others. Love your neighbor. Less is more. All right, that's gonna be the end of the video. Hope you guys have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.